Hi, welcome back. Certainly glad to see you today. It's a fantastic day here and hope it is wherever you're at. So I tell you what, let's start out today and have them run all the colors across the screen that you need to paint along with us.
Bob Ross was the calm voice behind millions of peaceful afternoons, soft words, gentle smiles, and thousands of painted trees, rivers, and happy little clouds. To the world, he was the man who made art feel safe. But behind the soothing TV image was a private life most fans barely knew. Bob worked non-stop. He created more paintings than most artists ever could in one lifetime. Yet when he passed away, the story didn't stop. His artwork, his name, and his legacy became part of a long, complicated fight. Years passed. Questions stayed open, and curiosity faded, until one quiet moment brought all that mystery rushing back into the spotlight. Join us as we follow Bob Ross's life, career, and the legacy fight that still leaves fans searching for answers. From Florida roots to a gentle love for animals. Bob Ross was born in Daytona Beach, Florida, and raised in Orlando by working-class parents. His father, Jack Ross, was a carpenter, and his mother, Ollie Ross, worked as a waitress. From an early age, Bob showed a deep love for helping animals. As a teenager, he often cared for injured wildlife, including squirrels, armadillos, snakes, and even alligators. One of those rescued squirrels later appeared on several episodes of his TV show, becoming a quiet symbol of the calm life he valued. Bob also had a half-brother named Jim, whom he mentioned casually on the program. School never felt like the right path for him. He left during the 9th grade and began working alongside his father as a carpenter. During one job accident, Bob lost part of his left index finger. Despite this setback, it never stopped him from holding a paint palette properly later in life. At 18 years old, in 1961, Bob joined the United States Air Force and trained as a medical records technician. Over time, he moved up the ranks and became a master sergeant, serving as the first sergeant of the clinic at Eielson Air Force Base in Alaska. It was in Alaska that Bob saw the snowy mountains and wide-open wilderness for the first time. Those peaceful scenes stayed with him, and later became some of the most common subjects of his artwork. During brief breaks from his military duties, Bob practiced painting and learned how to work quickly. At the same time, the military shaped his personality in ways he later wanted to leave behind. He once described himself as the guy who makes you scrub the latrine, the guy who makes you make your bed, the guy who screams at you for being late to work. When his service years neared an end, Bob made a personal choice. He decided he would never raise his voice again once he left the military. That promise became part of the soft-spoken style the world would eventually recognize. But at this stage, Bob was still far from the painter millions would one day know. Discovering painting and the wet-on-wet method. While serving in Alaska, Bob joined an art class at the Anchorage USO Club. Painting quickly caught his interest, but not all his teachers matched his vision. Many focused on abstract styles, which left Bob frustrated. He later explained, "They'd tell you what makes a tree, but they wouldn't tell you how to paint a tree." He wanted clear steps, not theory. While working as a part-time bartender, Bob discovered a television show called The Magic of Oil Painting, hosted by German artist Bill Alexander. Alexander used a centuries-old method called wet-on-wet, also known as alla prima, which allowed full paintings to be finished in about 30 minutes. Bob studied the technique closely and taught himself to master it. He began creating landscapes inspired by Alaska on novelty gold mining pans, then sold them to tourists. Unexpectedly, the paintings became very popular. Bob soon realized that he was earning more money from art than from the Air Force. In 1981, he retired from military service as a master sergeant in order to fully commit to painting. After returning to Florida, Bob studied further with Bill Alexander and joined the Alexander Magic Art Supplies Company. He worked as a traveling tutor and sales representative, teaching beginners across the country. During one session in Clearwater, Annette Kowalski attended and immediately saw Bob's natural ability to connect with people. She believed he could succeed independently and encouraged him to build his own path. Bob, his wife, and Annette and her husband Walt combined their savings to create his company. The early days were difficult financially. Even Bob's curly hair came from trying to save money when frequent haircuts became too costly. He later admitted he disliked the hairstyle but kept it because the look appeared in the business logo. In 1982, a small station in Virginia aired a taped version of Bob's art lesson as a pilot program. The response surprised everyone. Within 1 year, 60 PBS stations around the country signed on to carry the show. In 1983, PBS station WIPB invited Bob to Muncie, Indiana, offering creative freedom to further develop the series. Bob felt a strong connection with the staff there and accepted. Although he moved back to Florida in 1989, he continued traveling to Muncie every 3 months to record episodes, a routine that helped grow what was quickly becoming a national sensation. The joy of painting takes shape. The Joy of Painting officially ran from January 11, 1983 to May 17, 1994, and continued to be replayed on television in later years across multiple channels and countries. Each half-hour episode followed the same calm format. Bob demonstrated the wet-on-wet oil painting technique while creating entire scenes directly on the canvas without sketching first. He worked from imagination in real time. Viewers watched as he explained each stage in simple steps while using a limited paint palette. His gentle voice and slow pacing became as important as the paintings themselves. Art critic Mira Shore later compared Bob to Fred Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, noting their similarly soft voices and relaxed speaking styles. Bob never received payment directly from PBS for the show. Instead, all income came from how-to books, videotapes, and art supplies connected to the program. With help from Annette and Walt Kowalski, Bob used the popularity of the show to grow Bob Ross Inc. into a business that eventually reached $15 million in value. The company expanded beyond Bob himself and included classes taught by other artists trained in his methods. Yet for Bob, business never replaced his personal values. He continued filming wildlife around his home, especially squirrels. He regularly took in injured or abandoned animals and cared for them himself. Painting remained his central focus. Over his lifetime, Bob produced an estimated 30,000 paintings, a number few artists ever reach. Despite that massive output, original Bob Ross paintings remained surprisingly rare on the public art market. When works appeared for sale, prices usually reached into the thousands of dollars and frequently went beyond $10,000. Most paintings available to collectors came from Bob's work years before the television show began. Bob Ross Inc. retained ownership of many paintings made during the series, since Bob himself opposed turning his artwork into financial investment tools. One early exception was A Walk in the Woods, the first painting created for television, which sold through a pledge drive shortly after the first season aired. The piece later entered the collection of art dealer Ryan Nelson, who listed it with an asking price of nearly $10 million. Even as values rose, Bob's work became most popular with everyday fans rather than luxury collectors, people who felt personally connected to the man they watched paint at home. A growing cultural icon and public legacy. While Bob Ross Inc. continued to expand its reach through training programs and equipment sales, Bob remained committed to the original mission of making painting approachable. His show remained simple and instructional. He broke painting down into easy steps, made no heavy demands on skill levels, and encouraged beginners to trust themselves. His manner never changed. He stayed calm, spoke gently, and taught without judgment, always working live from blank canvas to finished scene in under 30 minutes. The connection viewers felt with him grew deeper as the show reached new audiences. International broadcasts introduced Bob to viewers worldwide. During long periods of global lockdown in the United Kingdom, the BBC repeated episodes as people turned to his calm presence for comfort at home. At the same time, the company continued holding large numbers of original works from the show while publicly circulating art remained mostly limited to Bob's early pieces. This pattern shaped a unique market where the value of a Bob Ross painting reflected not fame or luxury status, but emotional connection. Art appraisal services later described his work as sitting between fine art and entertainment memorabilia, explaining why everyday fans, rather than wealthy elite collectors, drove most demand. By this stage, Bob was no longer just a television teacher. He had become an international symbol of calm creativity. Millions recognized his soft voice, steady brushwork, and gentle encouragement. The simple technique behind the magic. Bob Ross painted using the wet-on-wet oil painting method. This meant he painted directly onto a thin layer of wet base paint. Nothing needed to dry first. This technique allowed each painting to move fast from start to finish. Ross kept the tools simple. He used only a small number of brushes and colors, so beginners did not need to spend much money. His main tools were large 1-inch and 2-inch brushes and painting knives. These made it easier to shape mountains, clouds, and trees quickly. Ross often cleaned his brushes using odorless paint thinner, which he recommended to viewers. The wet-on-wet style, mixed with the soft brush movements and simple color choices, helped entire landscape scenes form in under 30 minutes. For every painting shown on television, Ross actually created 3 versions. The first was done before filming and sat off camera as a guide. He followed that while painting the second version during the episode, which viewers watched being created live. After recording, he painted a third, more detailed version for his instruction books. Each one carried a special mark on the back or side. The first was labeled Kowalski. The show version had TV, and the book painting was marked Book. These behind-the-scenes copies proved how carefully planned the calmness really was. While the paintings looked spontaneous on screen, each episode was quietly supported by preparation that viewers never saw. And much of that preparation traced back to one person who shaped Ross more than anyone else: Bill Alexander and the strained bond. Bob Ross never hid where his foundation came from. He dedicated the first episode of the second season of The Joy of Painting to Bill Alexander, the artist who taught him the wet-on-wet technique. Ross said clearly, "Years ago, Bill taught me this fantastic technique, and I feel as though he gave me a precious gift, and I'd like to share that gift with you." That gratitude was sincere, but the relationship changed as Ross became more popular. Alexander did not take the shift lightly. In 1991, he told the New York Times, "He betrayed me. I invented wet-on-wet, I trained him, and he thinks he can do it better." The tension between teacher and student became public. Yet art historians pointed out something bigger. The wet-on-wet style had existed long before either man. The technique began in 15th century Flanders and was used by classic painters such as Frans Hals, Diego Velázquez, Caravaggio, Paul Cézanne, John Everett Millais, John Singer Sargent, and Claude Monet. This history put their disagreement into a wider picture. The technique was not owned by any one artist. It was passed down through centuries. Even so, Ross always made sure to credit Alexander publicly. While others debated the origins, Ross focused on teaching. His popularity kept growing, and the way he spoke, dressed, and acted became just as recognizable as his brushstrokes, leading viewers to remember not only his landscapes, but his unique style and unforgettable sayings. The voice, look, and scenes fans remember. Bob Ross became famous not only for how he painted, but for how he spoke while painting. He repeated friendly phrases that viewers still quote today, especially, "Let's add some happy little trees." In nearly every episode, he showed how much he enjoyed cleaning his brushes. He would dip them into odorless thinner, then strike the brush against a box or trash can to shake off the liquid. Sometimes he would hit the can hard, smile, and laugh while saying he liked to beat the devil out of it. On occasion, he added a playful "hit the bucket" before tapping the brush against the easel. Ross also used a lightly sanded palette so studio lights would not reflect off its surface while he worked. His clothing never changed. Jeans, a plain light-colored shirt. He believed this simple look would always feel timeless. During the show, he spoke slowly and softly, as if talking to one single viewer rather than a giant audience. When asked why everything in his painted world seemed so peaceful, he explained, I got a letter from somebody here a while back, and they said, "Bob, everything in your world seems to be happy." That's for sure. That's why I paint. It's because I can create the kind of world that I want, and I can make this world as happy as I want it. Shoot, if you want bad stuff, watch the news. His landscapes usually showed scenes inspired by Alaska, where he had once been stationed in the Air Force. Mountains, snow, lakes, forests. Sometimes a quiet log cabin would appear, often without smoke from the chimney and seemingly empty. Ross rarely painted people or signs of daily human life. Instead, he often mentioned animals that could exist in the landscapes, a cow in a barn or birds in the trees, and encouraged viewers to imagine stories for the scenes in their own minds. One of his most famous sayings summed up his teaching style: "We don't make mistakes, we just have happy accidents." Research later found patterns in his paintings. An analysis of 381 episodes showed that 91% included at least one tree, 44% had clouds, 39% included mountains, and 34% showed mountain lakes. By Ross's own estimate, he completed more than 30,000 paintings in total. But his calming presence soon spilled beyond his canvas, leading to public appearances that surprised many fans. Stepping beyond the canvas. Bob Ross enjoyed country music and found himself invited onto the stage at the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville in 1987 by Hank Snow. When the audience saw him, they gave him a massive ovation. Ross admitted he felt nervous at first, but relaxed after he cracked a joke to the crowd. Later, Snow even received a private painting lesson from him. Ross also traveled to New York City several times to promote his book, The Best of the Joy of Painting with Bob Ross, and to demonstrate painting techniques in front of live audiences. During one visit in 1989, he appeared on The Joan Rivers Show. In 1992, he returned for a live broadcast with Regis Philbin and Kathy Lee Gifford. In 1994, Ross appeared on The Phil Donahue Show. During that episode, he brought 5 audience members on stage to paint alongside him. Donahue even joined in and painted himself. In the early 1990s, Ross recorded several promotional spots for MTV. According to American City Business Journals, these ads connected well with Generation X and their growing interest in ironic and retro culture. One of Ross's final public appearances came in 1995 as a guest on the pilot episode of the children's series, The Adventures of Elmer and Friends. The series aired in 1996 and included a final message of thanks from Ross along with a musical tribute. A quiet moment that reminded viewers of how deeply his calm painting style had reached into popular culture long after the brushstrokes were finished. Family, marriage, and a very private life. Bob Ross lived a much more private life than fans ever realized. He married 3 times and had 2 children. His first child came from a relationship he had when he was a teenager. Later, with his first wife, Vivian Ridge, he had a son named Robert Stephen "Steve" Ross. Steve followed closely in his father's footsteps and became a talented painter himself. He even appeared on The Joy of Painting from time to time and became a Ross-certified instructor. Steve's most memorable on-screen moment came during the final episode of Season 1. In that episode, he read letters from viewers filled with how-to questions. Bob answered each question while painting live, working through each technique step by step until the full painting was complete. Despite these family moments on TV, Bob's marriage to Vivian ended in divorce in 1977, reportedly due to his infidelity. Bob later married Jane, but the couple did not have children together. In 1992, Jane died from cancer. Just 3 years later, Bob married for the 3rd time to Linda Brown, only 2 months before his own death. Even with marriages, growing children, and fame, Bob stayed very guarded about his personal life. He avoided public interviews whenever possible and valued privacy deeply. Very few insights into his off-camera world exist, and much of what is known comes only from select interviews in the PBS documentary Bob Ross, The Happy Painter. Bob Ross Inc. has continued to be extremely protective of both his image and private details. While millions felt they knew him through television, Bob kept his real life carefully shielded. Spiritually, Bob did not belong to any organized religion. He did believe in a creator God, and often ended his episodes with the simple blessing, "God bless." Though he became a comforting figure to strangers around the world, he kept emotional distance from the spotlight, a choice that would later contrast sharply with what happened once his life unexpectedly came to an end. Illness, quiet passing, and business fallout. Bob Ross smoked cigarettes for most of his adult life and dealt with ongoing health problems. He believed he would probably die young. Years before his passing, he was diagnosed with lymphoma. Bob never shared this news publicly. Only close friends and family knew the truth. Outside that small circle, no one was aware of how serious his condition was. Even while sick, Bob kept working. At the time of his death, he had already prepared 7 paintings intended for what would have been the 32nd season of The Joy of Painting. Bob passed away at the age of 52 on July 4, 1995 in Orlando, Florida, due to complications from lymphoma. He was later laid to rest at Woodlawn Memorial Park in Gotha, Florida, beneath a plaque reading, "Bob Ross, Television Artist." His diagnosis became public only after he had died. His passing also triggered immediate business consequences. Under the original setup of Bob Ross, Inc., the death of any partner meant that person's company ownership would be split evenly between the remaining partners. With Bob's death, and the earlier death of his wife Jane, the second partner, the Kowalski family became sole owners of the company. Their interest focused mainly on using Bob Ross's name for painting supply sales. Conflict followed quickly. According to reports, the Kowalskis acted aggressively toward members of Bob's family and his associates, allegedly attempting to pressure Bob while he was ill to sign over rights to his estate before his death. However, Bob rewrote his will before passing. He removed the Kowalskis entirely and left his estate, including rights to his name and likeness, to his son Steve and his half-brother Jimmy Cox. The Kowalskis challenged the will, arguing that nearly all of Bob's work qualified as work for hire, meaning the rights legally belonged to the company rather than Bob himself. A lawsuit followed, and eventually the Kowalskis succeeded, winning legal control of Bob Ross's name and business interests, reshaping control of his legacy almost overnight. Business expansion and ongoing disputes. After Annette and Walt Kowalski later retired from running the company, their daughter Joan Kowalski took over Bob Ross, Inc. Under her leadership, the brand expanded far beyond painting supplies. Merchandise tied to Bob's image entered the mass market throughout the 2010s. Joan Kowalski also negotiated a settlement with Steve Ross and Jimmy Cox. The agreement granted Bob Ross, Inc. permanent rights to Bob's name and likeness. In return, Steve Ross would be allowed to continue his own painting career publicly without fear of legal action, something Steve said had largely stopped him from painting for years after his father's death. Joan Kowalski also organized a revival of The Joy of Painting. The new project used the paintings Bob had prepared for the planned season 32. Nicholas Hankins, a certified Bob Ross instructor, served as the host for the revival series. While business expanded and legal matters settled formally, questions about the handling of Bob's legacy continued to linger among fans. Meanwhile, Bob's image began to pop up everywhere outside of formal painting circles. Cosplayers dressed as Bob Ross at fan events like New York Comic Con. Street artists painted murals of him in cities such as Ankara, Turkey. His likeness appeared in television shows, movies, and video games including Family Guy, The Boondocks, Deadpool 2, and Smite. In 2012, Google honored him on what would have been his 70th birthday with a Google Doodle showing Bob painting a landscape that formed the letter G. A board game titled Bob Ross, The Art of Chill hit Target shelves. A Bob Ross Chia pet was released. Plans once existed to create Bob Ross video games for the Wii, Nintendo DS, and PC, but those projects were canceled before release. His face had turned into both a cultural tribute and a commercial icon, leading into a new era that surprised even the very people managing his brand. Digital revival and museum recognition. In 2015, Bob Ross saw a major comeback thanks to Twitch Creative. The platform aired a 9-day marathon of The Joy of Painting, starting October 29th, marking what would have been his 73rd birthday. The response was massive. Twitch reported 5.6 million viewers tuned in. Because of its success, the show began airing weekly, with one full season rebroadcast every Monday. A portion of the ad money was pledged to charities, including St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Interest kept growing. In June 2016, Netflix added Beauty is Everywhere to its lineup. These episodes came from seasons 20, 21, and 22 of the original series. The sudden surge surprised the Kowalskis, who were managing Bob's brand rights at the time. In response, they launched an official Bob Ross YouTube channel, which gained more than 1 million subscribers in its first year. Soon after, a 24-hour fast network called the Bob Ross Channel was created. It streams reruns non-stop on platforms including the Roku Channel, DirecTV Stream, and Peacock. At the same time, Bob Ross continued to reach new audiences across pop culture. In 2020, Magic the Gathering released limited trading cards featuring Bob Ross artwork. In 2021, Netflix released the documentary Bob Ross: Happy Accidents, Betrayal, and Greed, which examined his life and the disputes surrounding who controls his legacy. That same year, a children's biography titled This Is Your World: The Story of Bob Ross was published, written by Sophia Goltz and illustrated by Robin Boyden. In 2023, actor Owen Wilson portrayed a fictional character inspired by Bob Ross in the film Paint. Decades after Bob's passing, his calm voice and gentle style remained deeply rooted in popular culture. And renewed attention soon led fans to ask one big question that had gone unanswered for years. Where were all his original paintings? Where did all the Bob Ross paintings go? Bob Ross painted an incredible number of works, yet very few appear in auctions or museums. That mystery was finally answered in a 2019 investigation by the New York Times. During the filming of The Joy of Painting, Bob painted 3 versions of every scene. He created one painting before filming as a reference, another live during the episode for viewers to watch, and a third afterward for his how-to books. With 403 episodes, this resulted in more than 1,000 paintings made for the show alone. Yet instead of being shown or sold, most of these originals were quietly stored away. The investigation revealed they are kept at Bob Ross, Inc. headquarters in Northern Virginia. The paintings are boxed up and placed in a regular storage room alongside company papers and personal items. They are not held in climate-controlled art storage, and the building is closed to the public, meaning fans cannot view the artwork there. None of the paintings stored by Bob Ross, Inc. are for sale, which also means many so-called Bob Ross originals seen online are likely not authentic. Some real paintings have reached the public in limited ways. In early 2019, Bob Ross, Inc. donated a small selection of items to the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History. These included the paintings On a Clear Day and Blue Ridge Falls, along with notebooks and fan letters. While the paintings entered the museum's collection, they were not immediately displayed. Later that year, a special exhibition at the Franklin Park Arts Center in Purcellville, Virginia, displayed 24 genuine Bob Ross paintings, the largest public showing of his work ever held. The discovery of where the paintings were kept solved a long-running mystery, but also fed into ongoing discussion about Bob's legacy. This conversation intensified with the release of Netflix's Happy Accidents, Betrayal, and Greed in 2021, which focused on legal disputes over the rights to Bob's name and artwork. Bob Ross, Inc. pushed back, calling the documentary inaccurate and heavily slanted, and accusing its producers of bias. The company emphasized that the film correctly honored Bob's talent and gentle spirit, but unfairly portrayed the current owners, Walt and Annette Kowalski, longtime business partners who co-founded Bob Ross, Inc. in 1984 alongside Bob and his wife Jane, and later gained full control of the company after both Bob and Jane's deaths. The film claimed rights to Bob's name and likeness were taken from his son, Steve Ross, through aggressive legal pressure, a version of events the company strongly disputes, leaving fans caught between the peaceful image of the painter they loved and the complicated business battles that followed his fame. Do you think Bob Ross's paintings should be shared with the public more, or kept protected where they are? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more incredible stories from Hollywood's fascinating history. See you next time!